The following program contains graphic material and subject matter that may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
I need an ambulance. Where? In California.
Okay, what's the problem?
It looks like somebody's dead.
It looks like they are.
My mom looks like she's dead.
Okay.
But I don't know, it might not need an ambulance. It might be too late. Oh, Jesus.
They're on their way. What is your name, please?
Julianne Stallman.
Okay, John, they're
I'm here.
Okay, they'll be right there.
Thank you.
My mother is Julianne Stallman, and she was murdered in 1994 in Butte, Montana. Her neck was slashed. She had been nearly decapitated. We were very close. She was my very best friend.
The Butte Silver Bow law enforcement team continued their investigation today into last night's brutal murder of 41-year-old Julianne Stallman. Her body was discovered just after 6 o'clock last night by her son at her home on California Street.
Stabbings typically are very intimate killings. It's a crime of passion, it's a rage. You know, she's gone and she's never coming back, but I don't think I'll ever stop until we get an answer. And right now, as you and I sit here today, it's going to be solved.
Watching from these castles, I keep building up so tall, but you can only push so far till it falls down. You don't know what I wouldn't do to make it out alive.
I'm Patty Fulton, Julie Stallman's sister. We grew up in Butte. She was happy-go-lucky, very kind. As we got older, we were best friends. She's just fun.
There's 8 of us. My brothers are the oldest, Tom and Joe, and then Linda, Julie, Mary, Paula, and Patty, and then I was born later. Family was really important to us. Holidays, we were always together. We'd have birthday parties, stuff like that. Our house was like central. You just, people came and went. You didn't have to knock on the door or anything like that. You just came in and got something out of the refrigerator or whatever. And
I don't know, just a fun American regular family, I guess. As we got older, we lived close together and raised our kids together, skiing and swimming and sleigh riding and floating the river. Loved her kids. She'd do anything for her kids.
I had an amazing childhood. I grew up in Wise River, in the middle of nowhere. Our nearest neighbors were miles away. And my brother and I spent a lot of time outside just doing country stuff, you know? And my mom was an amazing woman. She was a great mother. She was funny. She was so creative. She was a sewer, she was a quilter, she did cross stitch and crocheting and knitting. She had the most amazing laugh ever. Like, I miss that so much. I want to say everybody loved her, but obviously somebody didn't like her. It was a normal Tuesday. It had just snowed. I had gone and done some Christmas shopping. My best friend dropped me off at home, and I was just doing normal house stuff with my 2 girls at home.
I was on my way down to Julie's house, but I thought I better not go. It's getting dark and the roads are nasty. So I just went home.
My brother owned his own business at the time, Stallman Steel. So he had left his business, he went home, he parked his truck. He used his house key to get into the house, but he's not 100% sure if the door was actually locked or not. All the lights were off in the house, and that wasn't normal for my mom. If she was home and it was dark out, the lights would be on.
And he said he went in to the house and, called for her. And then he found her in the kitchen.
He didn't enter into the kitchen. He didn't try to render aid because he saw that she was gone. My brother called me and told me that she was dead. And then he hung up the phone. I mean, I don't remember the entire conversation. I just know he told me that she was dead. I know this is weird to say, but I kind of thought he was joking. And so then I immediately called my mom's house, and there was no answer. So then I called my grandparents' house. And my grandpa answered the phone. I asked if my mom was there. And he said that he hadn't seen her, but she was supposed to be there, and she hadn't showed up. So then I had loaded my kids up in the truck, and I just drove down to her house. And then when we came around the corner, you could see all of the police cars were in front of the house. And then I just jumped out and tried making a run for the house, and then I was stopped. I wanted inside the house because I couldn't believe that it was actually happening. And then the sheriff came over and told me that she was in fact dead and that it was a homicide.
Breathe in, breathe out, and say a prayer now.
I wasn't home maybe 5 minutes when Jenny called me, told me that her mom had died. I couldn't even comprehend it, really. We went to my dad's house. Then we just waited for the sheriff to come, and he told us that she had got murdered, and they were investigating it.
My grandpa, so my grandparents each had their own chairs, and my grandpa was in his chair, and my grandma was in her chair, and seeing them literally hurt me so bad.
It wasn't true.
My mom was sitting in her chair, and my dad was sitting in his chair, and he was crying.
Tried to forget.
And I'd never seen my dad cry. It was surreal to me. It was not really happening.
I mean, they were just so broken like everybody, and it was so new and shocking that I think nobody could really wrap their head around what was to come in the next days and weeks and everything like that.
John came home and they had taken him to the jail and he was walking up and down the sidewalk. And I went out with him and he said, "What are you doing? Go back in the house." And then I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "What do you think?" I'm pretty close to John and I love him a lot. He's never been the same.
He lived with my mom at the time. He found her, so I can only imagine that will never leave his mind. You know, he'll see that. Probably sees it all the time.
And in the moment, it wasn't true. A million moments.
My name is Anthony Drenick. I'm a sergeant in the Detective Division in Butte Silver Bowl for Butte Police Department. November 29th of 1994, we get a 911 call from her son, Julianne Stallman. He's the one that came home and found her.
911. I need an ambulance. My mom looks like she's dead.
Okay.
Might not need an ambulance. It might be too late. Oh, Jesus.
Julianne was a waitress at Jacqueline's restaurant. It was a normal day for her at work. She gets off at 3. She gets home, and between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock is our timeline of when the homicide takes place. She was stabbed multiple times, some pretty significant stab wounds. She had some blood trauma. She had a significant cut to her neck. Her blouse is torn. She was clearly, from all the injuries, in a heck of a fight. There's a blood handprint of her putting her hand up by the threshold going out from the kitchen. She was fighting for her life.
She was itty bitty, 5 feet tall, 118 pounds. It's not going to take much to overpower her.
Her fingernails were like ripped off, like she had fought, and she had fought hard.
In our opinion, this is a crime of passion, because you don't violently murder the way that, she's been murdered, the way she's been cut up and beaten. A lot of hate behind that. That's what the crime scene looks like, a lot of hate.
The Butte Silver Bowl law enforcement team continued their investigation today into the brutal murder of 41-year-old Julianne Stallman. Her body was discovered just after 6 o'clock last night by her son at her home on California Street.
They never bothered anybody, or there was no wild parties or anything like that over there. They were very quiet people.
I don't know how to put it. It stung everybody around the neighborhood. It stung everybody.
Crime lab people are on scene with one of our detectives, and they're going through every portion of the home, trying to identify anything that might be obvious as far as evidence is concerned, and then taking a lot of trace evidence, blood samples, fiber samples, that kind of evidence for the purposes of comparison.
So when you're documenting a crime scene, you're looking for anything. Anything that makes sense to what appears to have taken place. No signs of forced entry into the house. We don't know if she was expecting anybody to come over.
The door frame was completely intact, so either they entered on their own or she let them in.
The scene, for the most part, is pretty much, I would say, 99% contained, all in the kitchen. So a majority of the house is nothing's really out of ordinary. There was nothing missing that would have indicated a burglary or robbery.
It was not a robbery, and there was no sexual assault. She was not raped.
There was a set of steak knives with a steak knife missing. It wasn't verified for sure is that the knife used, but to this standpoint today, we believe more than likely it was. It's the only knife that was missing.
Right over the threshold from the kitchen to the dining room, there was a bloody footprint. And then around the dining room table, there was also footprints. And then there was some footprints leading out the front of the house and onto the sidewalk, and then lost once it got into the middle of the street.
You have a very public homicide that took place, so to speak, where a lot of people knew Julianne, and a lot of rumors start happening, right? Because they always do with these things. So I saw so-and-so with bloody hands, and I saw this person said this, and there was a lot of that going on when I was looking at the case file.
I understand you have some information for me about the Stallman homicide.
I think I might have somebody that definitely had some sketchy behavior, and
Okay.
and like I'm thinking, you're probably wondering why is this coming up now?
Yes, I'm curious.
I don't know. That's okay. That would be.
Working around there is that we had some folks who were working in the kitchen who were from that prison pre-release program.
He's always going to restaurants because he's a truck driver. And he's always flirting with the waitresses, and he's always talking to them, and he's always just blah, 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 blah. He likes to hurt people. And
You know, any lead they had on that, they would go try and track down, like, okay, we gotta go talk to so-and-so, as we would today.
Hey, are you Mr.
Yes, I am.
I'm Detective Anthony Drenick. This is Captain George Hall with the Butte Police Department. The reason we're here is we have an investigation going on for a while in relation to Julianne Stallman. Do you remember her?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
You guys
Still.
for the one that killed her?
Yes, yes.
You gotta be kidding, you don't know who it was?
Nope, not yet.
I'll guarantee you it was that idiot.
They had two locations from within the crime scene that they found a male DNA profile. One was on a towel that he used to wipe himself and attempt to clean himself. The other locations on her body, and this was just recent within the last few years, we were able to find this same male profile under one of her fingernails, her bottom pant leg, and her bottom shoe. So, I mean, that's our guy. I mean, there's no way that DNA is on 3 locations on her, especially one under her fingernail. I mean, that whoever belongs to that DNA is our guy. A case like this, you have multiple people that would be suspects, obviously. Current boyfriends, ex-boyfriends, ex-husbands, whatever.
Did you stab Julie one or more times that caused her death? Do you ever remember hurting somebody that trusted you?
They were all excluded almost immediately from blood samples that were provided. I mean, at one time, John was considered a suspect.
Did you stab Julianne one or more times that resulted in her death?
No.
Did you cut your mother with a knife that later resulted in her death?
No.
Are you being truthful with the investigators regarding this case?
Yes.
His DNA was provided, and it does not match.
You know, they also took DNA from the neighbors, people that she worked with, people that people thought could have done it. Those did not match. If we're going with DNA and solving this with DNA, which is honestly all we have, none of those persons were responsible for doing it.
Over the years, we've got to a point now where 20 different individuals have been excluded as the donor of that DNA.
Forever I thought she knew who it was, because there was no forced entry or anything. So, you know, maybe they said, hey, it's me out here, you know. She probably said, oh, come on in, I'm in the kitchen.
I don't believe that she let them in. I believe they just entered on their own and caught her in the kitchen. Somebody went there with the intent to harm her. And even though they didn't use their own weapon, just because they didn't use their own weapon didn't mean they didn't bring one. I think that's how I've always kind of felt. Because if she would have been in the kitchen and that knife would have been there and she would have felt a threat, then maybe she would have grabbed that as her own weapon and they took that from her and then they used that just because they had it. I think that's kind of what I've always thought. Or could have been somebody came there to confront her and it went sideways. But I guess I don't know.
I don't know, I don't believe the intent was to kill her yet, or there, at the time of day. I mean, that's a normal, you're talking 3 in the afternoon till 6 in the afternoon. That's still a fairly busy time of day. You have mailmen walking by, or, you know, people are still moving out and about that time of day. If I'm gonna sneak in to do that, that's the worst time, in my opinion, to do that, right? So maybe the suspect was there to talk to her about something. It went south. I'm not so sure she didn't grab the knife to defend herself. You know, he got it from her and it just turned on her. That's always been a speculation of mine.
Like, I run all these scenarios through my head. What if it is a perfect stranger? What if it is somebody that we had no idea that existed?
The idea that it's a random person could very much be, they could have been somebody that was fascinated with her, or maybe somebody that was watching her from afar, showed up to talk to her about it. It could be very possible. Anything's on the table for what could have happened.
On November 29, 1994, Julianne Stallman was murdered in her home on California Avenue. She had been stabbed to death, her throat slit, and the kitchen was covered in blood. Julianne's killer has never been caught, but that could change thanks to DNA genealogy. The Butte Silver Bow Police Department will be taking the male DNA found at the crime scene to a private lab in the hopes of finding genealogical information. DNA from a crime scene gets uploaded into genetic genealogy databases. When matches start rolling in, police can trace a suspect through his or her family tree.
DNA has exploded in the last 20 years. Obviously, you've seen all these cases that are being solved from 30, 40 years ago because of DNA. The DNA technology is getting so good that the amount of blood or amount of DNA that they need is so much smaller that they would need from years ago. Now they just need, I mean, it's a speck smaller than a needle head. They can develop a full chain off that now. Pending nobody comes forward that says, hey, I did it, I think DNA will solve this, I do. And that's kind of the process we're in right now, is working with a company doing genealogy on that male DNA profile.
We have a DNA sample that they're putting in the ancestry, and it's our last home stretch that might connect somebody to this so we can find out what happened.
I knew that I was going to do anything that I could to get this case solved. If it was any of us, my mom would fight for us.
I think there was a newspaper article like 6 months after it happened, and it makes a comment about me saying like,
this is taking too effing long or whatever, you know? And I'm like, 6 months? 6 months I was saying that? Like, never in my wildest dreams would I imagine that we are just rolling up on 30 years.
I know that I miss my sister a lot. I miss her presence and her laughter. She had just this laugh that it carried, and it was infectious.
She was a loving person and a good mom and a good friend to a million people.
I miss her advice. She always knew what to tell me whenever I needed it. Sometimes I remember that she is right there with us.
If anybody knows anything, just help us. Help us, our family, find out what happened.
There has to be someone who knows something. It would close up a wound that just constantly festers.
I've not stopped.
I've pushed harder now than I ever have, and I'll never give up on my mom. The DNA is being tested as we speak.
I really think this is it. And after 29 years, we deserve to know. And we can't leave it hanging out there any longer.
Of the song that we're singing.